Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. During today's call, we're going to discuss a whole load of fun and exciting things. We're going to discuss how to find the right AI tools for your organization. We're going to showcase Workbench, and we're also going to hear, more importantly, firsthand insights from Joe from the trade desk on how they're currently using Tines Workbench and their advice for other security teams on how to get the most out of their AI investments. I'm really excited for the call. We'll give you a live demo and everything, but we'll have loads of time at the end of our session to answer your questions. So feel free to pop some questions in the Q&A tab on the right-hand side of your screen and send over your questions at any point. So I think with that, we can probably dive in. I should probably introduce myself first. I am Thomas. I am one of the founders of Tines. Spent 10 years working in security before starting Tines, and really built Tines to be the platform that we wished we had when we were working in security, and also the vendor that we wish we could have worked with. Tines, in case you aren't familiar with it, it's a smart, secure workflow automation platform. We allow security and IT teams to build any workflow or process, regardless of complexity, get up and running in a minute with no code, with no custom development. It's a fast and flexible enterprise-grade automation platform. Yeah, Joe, welcome to the webinar. Do you want to introduce yourself and the trade desk?
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you having me. I'm excited to be here and chat about this. This has definitely been an area that we've been excited about and leveraging quite a bit. But I'm Joe McCallister. I'm Senior Manager of Cybersecurity Operations at the Trade Desk. I oversee incident response and third-party risk management primarily, which we'll talk about some of the use cases there. But the Trade Desk is a advertising technology platform based out of California, but we have quite a big job ahead of us with changing privacy legislations and all that fun stuff. But we try to match up customers and their media spend appropriately. And then my job is to secure all that.
I love it. Not an easy job, and we've certainly really enjoyed working with the trade desk and some of the folks in your team. I think we've got a lot to cover today. I'll show you a quick agenda. So today we're going to talk a little bit about your journey into AI adoption, which is going to be fun. We're going to talk about AI in the SOC and in that third-party risk management space that you mentioned you also manage. I think that's probably a little underserved or certainly underknown, I suppose, for AI. We're going to showcase Workbench. I think at the point of the webinar, and I'm excited to do that. And then I think we'll probably talk a little bit about, I suppose, the journey from building, I suppose, maybe skeptical folks on your team to becoming advocates, and also empowering them and how you can empower them with Workbench and other AI tools. And then obviously at the end, we'll have a bit of a Q&A, which I'm really looking forward to. I can see one or two questions coming in already, which is great. To get us started, Joe, maybe I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey for AI adoption. Like, when thinking about your team at the trade desk, what sort of challenges were you facing to find the right AI tools to align with your security team's specific needs and workflows?
Yeah, I think it's a you can kind of see on the slide here, but one of the things is, first, what are we being asked to do? And we're asked to do quite a bit. And these days, it seems to be, I use the other analogy, do more with less, but I also like to say a lot more gets added to the plate, but the plate's not getting any bigger. So we have to find a way to do things either more efficiently or prioritize, kind of figure out what items are worth the squeeze and go from there. We are also trying to kind of figure out how best to get the work done in a manner that serves the function, but also ultimately the end of it all is what serves the business, what serves our support function, what serves our customers, who are, sales, HR, accounting, everybody at the organization. As a publicly traded organization, what serves the shareholders as well. So what we kind of, our journey is a funny one. I try to liken it to, the tire is heading down the hill. It's already on fire. We're actually not going to catch this thing. So we probably need to just get used to it. We should get set up around some guardrails, figure out what it is, how to adopt it. Every vendor that we see is also piping AI into their product in some way, shape, or form. So really, it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's much of a strategy as much as it is a kind of opening the arms and just letting the inevitable happen to us, but being prepared and understanding what the technology is and how we can leverage it as a team, and also shore up the risk around it when it comes to our organization.
I suppose how important is that? Like, obviously, you're a lean security team, and my favorite phrase is that the better you get at detecting, the more you have to respond to. But how do you? I suppose you're handling a lot of sensitive company data. How do you investigate AI tools? Like when you're considering them, what do you consider in order to make sure that this is something that you might want to implement?
Well, it's really everything from the reputation of the vendor and the tool and who kind of what has happened in the past for, like it or not. We do me also being the third party risk management
Yeah.
head. I always consider kind of how things have gone in the past 12, 24, 36 months for that organization. How many I don't want to use the B word, but how many events have they kind of had? How do they treat data in the past? Is this a flash in the pan is also something I kind of look for. So we have a lot of conversations. One that we had with Tines that I appreciated was this is the future. This is great. And we are invested in it. And I could kind of see where the future opportunity for the product ad was. But like I said, everybody's adding it. It's a matter of how they're adding it and if they're thinking about it. And typically we can get to the bottom of that pretty quickly by asking a few key questions about like our workflows. Like, are you going to be able to help my analysts open less tabs, right? Because they get a signal or an alert or might be in the middle of an incident. How many times do I want them popping out of a tool to go do something? As few times as possible. So being able to see that in action and not get the fancy JavaScript demo that they have to stop and redo for us, or anything we can do live in our environment is so great. A POC, a POV, those types of things really helped us. But starting at the top of the funnel, it was all about kind of the partnership and who, if we already had existing ties, or if we could kind of find out more about them quickly.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is it has to be like secure and trustworthy. It can't be ridiculously expensive. It has to be able to add value really quickly, and yeah, it has to really like actually help your analyst without expanding headcount. I wish everybody was able to get that headcount. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I also liken it to time to value. We always look for that.
Yeah.
Like, how quickly are we going to get something out of this tool? And with AI, it's either right away or it's not at all typically.
Yeah, there's a lot of not to criticize anybody. There's a lot of really good demos of AI features in a whole lot of products out there. But yeah, absolutely making sure that you're focusing on outcomes and value is the only way you should be evaluating. How did that lead you to Workbench? How did you, I suppose, start addressing any? How did we address any concerns you had, like those security and privacy guardrails that you were talking about?
Well, part of it was the partnership again that already existed between us and Tines.
Yeah.
We were Tines customers in the core product and really latched onto that very quickly. The nice thing to see was that the awareness and adoption and embracing of the product really happened organically. It kind of went from security was excited about it because we could do a lot of the things that we would either need more heads to do, or we could get out of kind of the job of tedium. And then we saw our IT team kind of tapping us on the shoulder. We brought them into the POC from the beginning, so they knew about the product. But as they started to kind of get on board, it became, oh, wait a minute, we can do this, we can replace this, we can turn this tool off. They really kind of started to buy into the vision. And really kind of what started to hint towards what Workbench was and get us asking a question of like, well, let's check this thing out, was the AI action within stories itself. So there's a little toggle we could kind of flip on to help us figure out the event transform action in particular can be, if you've played with Tines at all, it is extremely powerful, but also sometimes finicky in terms of if you're just looking at it, click a button and hope to see and haven't done, say, Tines University or some of the training materials. It could be a little obtuse at first, but once you unlock the power of that thing, it's wild. Being able to turn on something that could just help us find the right action to do right away kind of was that light bulb moment of like, okay, well, hang on a second here. We've heard about this new thing y'all are working on as well. And that's when we started to get in touch with our sales folks.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And I think you guys I know you were instrumental in giving us a whole lot of feedback and working through that initial POV and telling us the direction you wanted the product to go and wanted some of our features to go. So from a security and privacy perspective, what is it the case that, and I know you're in charge of third-party risk management here, you just deploy it, or what are you looking for when you're looking at AI in tools for the trade desk?
Really, we want to look at what it does and the quality of the output, and we try to focus in on in our conversations with Tines in particular for Workbench. What we were looking for is, can it do almost, how free and easy is this thing? Is it something that we can just fire a question at it? And will it respond with, I don't understand what you're inputting? Or will it come back with something like, did you mean to say something like this? Or is it easy to kind of figure out where you need to go? And will it kind of guide you? Will it kind of Sherpa you towards the right path up the mountain to get your task done? And I was able to find that almost immediately in our POC, especially with our use cases with alert. I forget the alerting one off the top of my head, but our third-party risk management one is the one that I ran, and that thing, I mean, it was easy from there. Other kind of like checking our boxes and doing our diligence include just asking the questions around kind of where's the data going, what kind of models are you using, and all that information was readily available and freely given. It was a great conversation with the Tines team just to figure out. It's always been a great relationship because you all are good partners. And I love the part at the beginning where you said you want to be the partner that you wish you had, because I think it truly, like from the heart, this has been a great partnership. So it was easy. It was just a conversation of us making sure that, our diligence was performed as protectors of the risk of the business and all that, and everything was kind of in line, and then that the features did what we wanted it to do, which was also very conversational. And then the proof was in the pudding during the POC.
I love it, and we'll dive into Workbench in a second. But yeah, definitely not only do we want to be the partner we want to be that we wish we could have worked with, we want to be the vendor that made your life easier as well. And that's like when we implemented our AI strategy from the very start, we said it had to be private and secure by design, that there was no logging, there was no data transfers to a third party, that that you could control your own data, bring your own LLM if you wanted, etc. So we try to make it as easy as possible. We've talked a little bit about Workbench so far, and obviously I think probably just makes sense to baseline a little bit on context for everybody listening. Like what is Workbench? We'll show you it in a second, but before that, Workbench is your familiar LLM chat interface, except it allows you to incorporate data from across your stack and to take action. So we found that the limitation with a lot of the LLMs was they didn't know anything about your environment, and also they didn't allow you to connect to your internal tools to take action. So instead of, for example, as Joe talked about and we'll talk about, switching context when investigating an incident, for example, you can open Workbench directly in Tines or in Slack and not only manage a case, but also gather tons of additional information and even take action. That could be, isolating a host, contacting a user, making a bucket private, that kind of thing, all without leaving your chat interface. By helping security teams to respond and work faster, what we're trying to do is basically make security teams more efficient, make their tech stacks glue together so there aren't like one-off integrations, and also just strengthen compliance, which I think definitely is something that you've been talking about. It may, I think like I can list off a whole lot of examples, but maybe could you talk about one or two of those use cases, those POC use cases, and the ones that you've got up and running now, that you've been leveraging, and are they different than what you thought they would be when you started?
Yes and no. I'll start with yes, because the first one's an easy answer, and it was kind of evidenced on that previous slide, and is in this first box here. Incident response is a pretty natural place for Workbench. And the only thing that it really required is something that's not unique to Workbench, but is more kind of natural progression of working with AI. And that's just adjusting the kind of mind frame and understanding how to use it effectively as the interaction point with the AI. I like to tell my team and myself, I actually struggled with the POC even, or using live alerts to do some triage. Jumping in and using Workbench or previously, before we had Workbench, any AI tool really, as a conversation point. When I'm doing incident response, I'm kind of, in the weeds deep, looking and asking myself questions in my head. And I've found over time, it actually is much more beneficial for me to just ask the question right in Workbench and say, okay, well, what's this IP? Well, that's an easy question for Workbench to go out and pull from our Cisco stack, or be able to pull from other parts of the network or other assets. What does this resolve to? Where is it going? Give me more info about this IP. Who logged onto this thing? What's the permissions that are granted to this? And all of those are right in that chat window. And then it can take orders from me essentially to say like, okay, bundle all that up into a nice thing, throw it in the Jira ticket, and we're good to go. That took a little bit of time, but it was kind of like the initial, like, I bet it can do this. It was how much it could do for us and how much it would be part of that process of incident response and even alert triage and the real kind of thought work that doesn't make it into documentation a lot of times because it's just in your head. It's the questions you ask of yourself.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like it's sometimes it's spidey senses, sometimes it's intuition, sometimes it's just like, yeah, your experience saying, I should probably investigate that IP, or I know that device is completely normal. But this looks pretty unusual over here. But yeah, the ability, first of all, for Workbench to suggest additional actions, but also for when you just ask a question for it to go out and do it is the real power. You then mentioned, and I'm looking forward to demoing this a little bit later, but you like those use cases that weren't quite as expected. I think you focus on one third-party risk that quite simply I hadn't thought of when I was when we were POCing with other customers.
Yeah, well, and to be honest, it was one that was a nice to have. It was not part of our kind of like evaluation criteria. But as we started to work through it and working with our teams on Tines and the Tines team, excuse me, and the trade desk teams, we kind of discovered like this could really get a lot of stuff together for us. Everybody that does these types of assessments and manages these kinds of workflows probably knows you have to go out and get a bunch of documentation, do a bunch of research, bundle it all up, take a look at everything, look for kind of the stuff that pops out, look for terms, look for stuff that is kind of just blinking red lights in either an 8K or something like that. That can take a lot of time. we used to do our vendor security reviews over typically like months, but we're able to get them down to just a few weeks based on really the slowest part of the process is the human process. We have to go talk to the other teams. We have to get information. We have to read some of the documentation or get it kind of into the systems. But then once it's in our workflows, we're able to use things like Workbench to also pull tools that we use. Some of the big ones that are out there, your BitSites, your OneTrust, your UpGuard are APIs. And that's the best part of working with Tines. Big shout out to our support team who anytime we would just come along and say, hey, do you have something for this vendor? They'd be like, shoot me the API docs. And 48 hours or less, typically, they would have it in Workbench, connectable. And I was able to just go and do an entire risk assessment in Workbench, send it all over to Jira, add my comments and button it up. I was able to get the example I like to use is what we prioritize things on a P scale, but there's a chili pepper you can throw on top of it that basically means this has VIP eyes on it. And we got one of those. I was able to take it, run it all the way to completion in just 2 hours, as opposed to what used to take typically at least a week, even for something that was the P0 of P0s. And I was able to all stay in one window, get all my questions answered about encryption, about the safety of that website and their externally facing endpoints, as well as kind of vendor reputation. And I felt good enough about saying like, things look good here.
Awesome, yeah, and I don't quite have that detailed demo, but I'll showcase how exactly to do. But yeah, as you say, like first of all, like connecting to other tools should be trivial. We can build templates for a whole load of different tools, but also you can create your own. And now we've enabled you to create your own private templates for Workbench as well. So it's really, really easy if you have the right if you have good API docs and a vendor that is prepared to supply them. That's even better. But even then, if you don't. It's really easy to connect to a whole lot of different tools and to build a workflow around it, which is fun. I think it might make sense just to showcase Workbench here. Give folks a quick display of it. Good. I was a little bit panicked there. I thought I wasn't going to be able to share my window, but hopefully this will work here. All right. So this is for folks that have never seen before, this is Workbench. It's your traditional LLM conversation, except over here on the left-hand side, there's a whole lot of tools that you can interact with. So I've enabled a bunch of different tools here, like Salesforce, BSI PDB, Jira, Google Calendar, and even some workflows that I can investigate, or I can call from Workbench itself. But I'm going to show Workbench in action, then I'm going to show those two use cases that Joe talked about. So one was just like a standard incident response investigation, and the second is a third-party risk style investigation, basically just connecting to a few different tools and their APIs. But yeah, first of all, here, like what I'm doing is I'm able to chat with the LLM and ask it any questions. I could ask it to generate a poem about the trade desk, or I could ask it to analyze an image or a PDF or something like that. Here I'm just going to ask it to extract the IOCs from a URL. And what this is doing is this conversation here, it's going to choose from the tools that are available over here on the left-hand side. So I've made these tools available, and you can see it's chosen based on my instructions to parse IOCs at a URL using IOC parser. So that's one of the tools that I've made available. Again, you can create these templates yourself. However, we've made these templates, certain templates available that you can just get started with pretty quickly. What's really cool about this, though, is obviously it knows your tools, but you're then able to like call workflows. So here, this is an investigation into the Snowflake incident that happened last year. I don't think Snowflake were super at fault or anything like that, so don't want to just accuse them of anything. However, it's an interesting one because it's got CVEs and a ton of IOCs. But you can see here, I can extract IOCs really easily. I can investigate that CVE. And when I say that CVE, it knows, it's talking about the CVE from above, etc. And I'm also able to, investigate the IP addresses, etc. So this is going to, look up a little bit more information about that CVE and, do some more investigation, which is cool. This is the very basic step of the Workbench. Take something and investigate it. But the real power is, I suppose, when you integrate it with your workflows. So there's a lot of things that are completely deterministic. That's your standard, incident response workflow where maybe you create a ticket afterwards. There's things then that require like human beings in the loop. So if you imagine a standard incident response workflow, it's something like this. And I'm using Jira here. I could be using Tines cases. I could be using ServiceNow or any other case management tool. But this is a really simple incident from this morning where somebody on our product team made an AWS S3 bucket public. What I've done here is I can now load this conversation in Workbench. So you can do this from any event in Tines. When I open it in Workbench, what it's going to do is it's open up the conversation, have some embedded context, and then I'm also able to select what is a preset. A preset is basically a select number of tools that you've made available to a certain team. So in this case, for my security team, I've made available this security preset, which has access to a bunch of different tools like CrowdStrike, Jira, Tines, VirusTotal, and one or two other tools as well, like looking up a user in multiple platforms or sending an email or enriching a CVE. So in this case, what I'm able to do, I'm able to have a conversation with it. And the sort of things that that Joe mentioned that you might want to do, like, investigate, who Stephen O'Brien is, or investigate, is this bucket still public or something like that. I can say, can you tell me who is Stephen O'Brien? And what this is going to do is it's going to choose from among the stories. So it's going to look up this user in multiple platforms, and it's going to tell me a little bit more about Stephen. This is the sort of thing that I could do automatically. I could enrich, but in a lot of cases, or I could enrich manually using a workflow. But in a lot of cases, you just can't, or a generic alert comes in. So here I can see Stephen is head of product at Tines, reports to Owen Hinchy, location US. He's active. I'm going to say, can you see, are there any other Jira cases associated with Stephen? And hopefully what this is going to do is it's going to search Jira and tell me a little bit more about Stephen, or if there's any other cases associated with them. So what I can do is, if I'm looking at this, I can actually see then the sort of details that Workbench is actually calling. So here I can see in order to search Jira, it's obviously use the search issues Jira template, but it's also just passed through the text Stephen O'Brien. And then I can actually see all the output. So I can see there were 4 issues open related to Stephen O'Brien. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then Jira is going to tell me a little bit more about it. So first of all, there's an old backlog issue. Apparently, Stephen O'Brien has tons of credentials floating around the place. That's really bad. Stephen is somebody that we really, probably shouldn't be doing that. In addition, there's a suspicious login detected for Stephen O'Brien just today. We've got this guard duty alert bucket made public today, and we've got another guard duty alert bucket made public about a week ago. So he's got a dangerous character. Prolific making buckets public, and also we have a suspicious login. Now I could, if I wanted to, pivot and investigate this IP address. That's very easy to do, but I might actually just say, can you tell me, is this bucket made public? And what this is going to do, I hope, is call a different template. So again, you can enable tons of templates. Okay, so can you verify if it is still public? It's just said it is because it didn't check. It decided that it is because the alert just showed this. Can you check, is it still public? Classic curse of the demo gods, though not so bad, I suppose. But what this is hopefully going to do is it's going to call the AWS CLI, write an AWS CLI command to check, is this public? And then if it is, I can even go ahead and make it private and update my ticket. Is there any other thing that you might do in this case while we're waiting for this to happen, Joe? What else might you investigate?
You kind of hit the nail on the head. The questions that come into my brain are going to be, well, was this a malicious actor? Something happened with Stephen's account, or was it just something that Stephen was messing around and either did something he didn't know what the ramifications were, or did he know and was just taking the easy way out? But yeah, this is great.
Yeah, so I think what I might do here is I might go ahead and make this bucket private in a second. So maybe say, let's go ahead and make this bucket private. And of course, what I could do is I could, send Stephen a message on Slack, or I could send him an email saying, hey, do you recognize this activity? But the first step is probably to make this bucket private. But yeah, absolutely. That's to investigate whether or not Stephen did this deliberately. I think in this case it's probably absolutely fine. But then again, if there's a suspicious login, maybe we need to investigate. So here again, what this is doing is I said make this bucket private. It's going to run this command. So it's written the command and said, change the access block configuration, restrict public bucket access is true. And now it's saying that it didn't quite work. So weird. Okay, I'm not entirely sure why that didn't work. It should definitely have made that bucket private. Maybe it did, and it just hasn't updated for a second. Okay, now I'll delete the bucket policy that's making it public. Okay. So the other thing is it usually confirms here. So it asks you to make a confirmation before showing that something's destructive, taking destructive action. I want to hit on that. Your third. This is a pretty standard incident response process. I could do this for CrowdStrike, and we can share a bunch of examples of those after the webinar. Or your suspicious logins, all that sort of stuff. But can you tell me a tiny bit more about that third-party risk example that you had earlier?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges in third-party risk is just kind of getting your bearings and making sure that you're making the right decisions for what you're bringing into an organization. And a lot of third-party risk teams, depending on your organization's size, are going to handle kind of the incoming and the outgoing. So for our vendors, we also send out questionnaires, and we kind of try to get some information from them about how they're going to secure our data, while at the same time getting questions from vendors that are asking us, hey, what are you doing with our data? And so what we need to do is be very kind of nimble, very agile, if you will. I know that's kind of a forsaken term these days in some circles, depending on your organization's history with methodologies. But what we try to do is a lot of the tools that are out there, a lot of platforms, because if you're still doing this in an Excel workbook, I feel for you, but it is still a method. It's better than nothing. We used tools like OneTrust, and we've used other ones. We interact with other vendors using other tools like BitSight and UpGuard. And what we needed to do was basically take a gathering of this data. There's a ton of information, and we needed to get a big picture quickly. So what we also were tasked with doing with our internal teams, they would come to us and ask us, hey, how many vendors are monitoring or how many vendors process employee information? How many are you reviewing? When were they last reviewed? We get a lot of those types of questions. And as opposed to getting asked the questions and answering them, we decided let's be proactive and let's try to get ahead of this. And thanks to UpGuard, or excuse me, saw the name and it just came there. But thanks to UpGuard and being able to be built in Tines so easily, we were able to do something like you're seeing here, where we can just say, what vendors are we looking at? And where it really comes in handy is this score. So there's an overall score, and then there's different subcategories like encryption and email security, endpoint security, all of that stuff. But we can get a list of our vendors very quickly. We can understand what scores they are. We can also tier our vendors according to what our data classification is. And then say, all right, I need you to pull all my tier 1 vendors that have a score of 300 or below, which is really bad in the world of UpGuard. And we would then say, okay, tell me what their scores are. Tell me what the highest risks they have. You can see a lot of the stuff populating here. And yeah, it gave us a great picture that we could then go say, we're also, I will caveat just as a third-party risk manager, we don't take some of these scores at face value. We like to dive into it and really say like, okay, well, one endpoint with, Chrome that's outdated by a few months is not going to be the end of the world. We'll keep an eye on it, but that's probably a risk we can accept. I'm not going to go email that team about it. However, something that's like no encryption in place is a bit more of a concern when considering also the tier of the vendor. But this gives us that one page where I can just have a conversation essentially with the system, which sounds weird, but it's me assessing the risk against the data that we already have. And Tines is able to answer all of this, and then even better, button it all up, send it to Jira so I don't have to go create the case, manually click all these buttons, and go from there. There's also API endpoints for sending out questionnaires. So if I say, okay, well, Tines hasn't had one in quite some time, I need to send them a new questionnaire for 2025. Send them my base questionnaire, send the relationship questionnaire to the application owner internally, and just ask them if it's processing our data. It was wild how these things are. You start playing with them, and then my brain starts going about how many things I can build in, how many workflows can go in here. And everything that we were doing just drastically cuts down again on our time to where our SLAs are looking beautiful. We can start to squeeze those a little bit more and say, like, we can get these back to you within just a few weeks, where we've kind of taken a pulse check on some of the external vendors asking us questions. And it's usually a couple of months that they're having to run these assessments, where we're turning these things around in just a couple of weeks, and the quality is high.
Absolutely, and like that, I absolutely love it, and I love that your focus isn't just on the external vendors. It's managing your internal stakeholders as well, which is like so critical when you've got a whole lot of customers that are asking your team questions. What I've done here is it's a very quick summary of that. I have deliberately chosen Tines as the vendor because I don't want to target anybody else, but you can see Tines actually has a pretty high score, which is nice. Anthropic has a high score. UpGuard has a, in fairness, any like 800 and above is absolutely a great score. There's no criticism. But then I picked VK.com and HostGator, and you can see like it's got customer data, business data in use. Tines has network access as well, as does CrowdStrike. And then like I'm pulling more information about that profile. So if you were asked, hey, what's the latest with Tines? Have we, investigated them in a while? They were only first monitored on May 6th. We've got tons of domains, not too surprising. Everybody has their own unique domain. And then, a bunch of risks. I've pulled information about their risks, and then I've actually just gone ahead and created a Jira ticket, which like actually looks pretty good here. Like for first pass with some very basic instructions like critical risks, high risks, key concerns, recommended actions, and additional information. Like despite these, Tines maintains an overall excellent security score. Like this is taking this information from UpGuard, which has a lot of really useful information, but taking, let's say it's, something with the lower score, taking this information, mapping it to a bunch of critical and high risks and creating a Jira ticket is something that, certainly in my experience would take a long time. So it's, it's really cool to be able to just do this by asking a small handful of questions and saying, create a Jira ticket.
Absolutely, and one thing that I think might go unnoticed in some of these is that the Workbench was able to kind of say, hey, this looks like risk, or this looks like score degradation due to or attributed to a few subdomains, as opposed to indicative of larger security issues at the vendor. When we put in, like, if you're anybody's doing business with AWS, Azure, or GCP, which is likely everybody in some way, shape, or form, the scores are going to be high. However, there are risks out the wazoo because every domain underneath them, technically they own, right? Even though we know the shared responsibility model and where that line lies is up to the customer to secure what's there. They're still going to. HostGator's probably a good example. That
was exactly what I was going to show. That I'm like, that HostGator is like, they've got tons of like insecure WordPress and like whatever, like no invalid SSL certificate. I'm like, yeah, of course they do. That's every single person that hosts a WordPress on HostGator is in trouble if they haven't updated it. So, and HostGator are getting a little bit of the blame for that.
Right. And I think that while Workbench does a great job of contextualizing that and making it easy for the analyst to kind of look at it and say, okay, that is at least attributable to something, it also still requires the analyst. So put your, kind of fears of AI taking everything over. There's still somebody driving these conversations, having the right context and experience, both of the industry at large and your specific organization, to say, okay, I am comfortable with the risk that this vendor may pose. It is low, or I'm going to escalate it just to get another set of eyes on it. But here's all of that information. That ticket, frankly, was beautiful. I would love to get that type of an assessment forwarded to say, oh yeah, this looks great. I think we can handle some of this. We can maybe ask them to remediate one or two things, button it up, and send it. But that was great. I liked it. I'm about to steal some of that template.
Yeah, awesome. Well, this I didn't do anything here. I just I literally just said, hey, create a Jira ticket. I did say, use a risk summary and critical risk details and key concerns, etc. But yeah, just it created it itself, which is awesome. Look, I guess you kind of hit the nail, or you touched on an issue there, which is something that I'm very cautious about, which is there's various opinions from analysts on ranging from AI is gonna like not help at all and just be completely useless, to AI is going to take my job, to AI is going to enable me to move so much faster and get promoted. Did you encounter any like resistance or skepticism from your team about AI adoption?
Thankfully, it was very limited. My team, I think, saw it very early on. I'll sing their praises to, till the cows come home, because they are extremely talented and smart individuals that kind of can see where it is most effective. I think we still had some surprises about where we could utilize AI more frequently. But a lot of times what was the larger hurdle is being able to take a step back and adapt some of your workflows. Usually you're so into your routine and just firing out, you're doing an investigation. I'm going to go check X, Y, and Z because that's my internal playbook, or that's what we have documented. And it's just second nature. It's muscle memory. Translating that over to an AI tool, or having it, spit out something that is incorrect, could also introduce some doubt of the tool itself. And so what we tried to do was just give a little bit of grace, almost like we're training a new teammate, right? Or bringing on a new hire that has a bit of experience, but it might need some kind of guidance along the way. Well, we didn't run into the hesitancy right away. The kind of hesitation about embracing AI in our immediate team. We definitely see a lot more red flags and question marks and Slack DMs about AI at large, because for a long time it was a very staunch, like, no, we're sending data somewhere else, and that is scary. And really it boiled down to doing our diligence around it. You could always kind of use the back pocket. Our data is probably going somewhere that you're not comfortable with it going already, but I would not necessarily keep that at the forefront. However, there are more than likely cases within your organization today that would be comparable to sending your data to another tool or something like that. Even better is when you can have a tool that you're looking at and you have the documentation, you have the backing, and you have the trust of the partner to say nothing's happening. We have vetted this. Our data is safe with this partner. We have a dedicated stack is one thing that Tines was great about talking to us about. From a feature perspective as well.
Yeah, and I know I talked about that a little bit earlier, but absolutely critical for for us that we're not sending, not that it's a cardinal sin or anything like that, but not sending data over the internet, making sure that like you're in control. That if you want, you can bring your own LLM, or if we're using and we are using AWS Bedrock, that like it's tenant scoped, it's in region, it's not going over the internet, which is a really nice thing to be able to say. I suppose even more looking at the those analysts, can you talk to a little bit about their reaction to to when you started introducing AI tools, and like did you have to go through a process to train them on how to how to use them or how to view them as as helpful for their jobs? What was that mindset shift like?
Yeah, it's definitely something to everybody kind of has their own journey with AI. I feel like I think there's kind of this you come to it, and some people were using ChatGPT 2 years ago, and some people are just getting into it today, or they might this could be their first foray into actually using a generative AI to talk back and forth between them. And I think the unlock really comes when you're thinking of something, but it maybe just plants the right idea or just says the right word back to you that gets you thinking in a different way. And that's what really, for myself and a lot of analysts that I talk to, and my teams in particular, is when you're kind of feeding it some ideas and it just comes up with something that you either forgot about or was a fundamental. We always kind of like to jump to the crazy nation state, let's go nuts, and then it's going to suggest DNS. You're like, oh, I should have checked DNS first, right? But it is one of those lessons that it just kind of feeds you, gets you thinking a little bit differently, while at the same time reinforcing some of the fundamentals that we know we all kind of can breeze past or take as assumptions, if we're being honest. And it can be a good reminder to have in that back pocket of just like, hey, did you check this? Did you check that? Did you run through here? And I think that's where we've seen the most kind of traction, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And like it's seeing it as that kind of, as you said, like that extra teammate. And sometimes you have to prompt it and be like, hey, actually, you're still a junior teammate. But in some situations, it can be incredibly like helpful. And I didn't even showcase that. We've got in Workbench the ability to, it's not even the ability. It will already always suggest 2 or 3 different like potential actions that you could take, and that could be, investigate that IP address or contact the user, etc. But it empowering you and like walking you through a potential investigation is really powerful. And allows you to, it's not go on autopilot or even like go on copilot, but it allows you to just double check and make sure that you're not missing anything. You're not missing anything critical. I suppose, has it changed the way they're able to focus on, like, it's changed the way they work? Has it changed the way they're able to focus on like more impactful efforts, or is there still so many alerts that you have to, are they still buried in logs, I suppose?
So they may disagree with my statement.
Shouldn't criticize. Go for it. Sorry.
They may disagree with my statement saying that they are not buried in logs. I don't. We are always kind of playing catch up, in all honesty. We're moving so quickly as an organization. We liken it to kind of the faucet, right? We have to kind of turn the faucet on, see what comes out of a tool, and we might just get, the bathtub might overflow and we might get that nice little drip where we can really tune. But that's where we're being able to have the most impact today, is our analysts are able to actually tune effectively. So when something comes out, we can say, okay, now we know what these logs look like. We know what correlating events we can talk to. We can do a bit of enrichment before it ever hits the SIM. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we're able to do that we were not able to do before this, and we can slow down the flow to say, okay, stop here, start to query that information, and then send it back through the sim to enrich the pipeline. Additionally, just in terms of workflow and time gains, since we are able to pare down how long it takes to process and run a playbook even, we are definitely eyeing more so in the future. I'll say we're still working on it, but we can see kind of that light at the end of the tunnel. That is the idea being we are going to level up our analysts. They are going to become experts and be able to leverage the AI as kind of the first step to look at some things. And then if escalations need to happen, or if we can do, our automated response, the team gets to train more. The team then gets to also focus on efforts that are a little bit more impactful in terms of the long-term strategy and making things just kind of better, or they get to go do fun stuff. They get to go research what else Tines might be able to do, or do a research project on an emerging threat actor where they used to be kind of, bell to bell looking at a few alerts as much as they could and trying to figure out, instead of just mindlessly processing and closing, we're getting much better at actively kind of using the brain to get through some of that stuff and doing the more challenging and if you ask me, more rewarding work at the end of the day when it comes to security.
Yeah, way more rewarding. I spent a long time working in the SOC, and it's fulfilling, but it can be exhausting. Do you think that's the most positive shift your team has experienced since you started to leverage Workbench?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll speak for my IT teams as well. They,
Yeah.
you notice the third use case back a handful of slides was IT remediation.
Yeah.
If you've got to turn down a user for whatever reason that might be, being able to run even a branching story, or being able to ask questions about what they had access to, running through what needs to be done in a matter of seconds without having to go log into Azure, then go double check the DCs, go grab their hardware, go check any systems that are not, configured with SAML or tied into our SSO, or what else did they have access to. We're able to tell Workbench just, hey, go find everything this person had. Here's their UPN, and here's their friendly name, and here's their manager. Go ahead and set everything up, and then in a matter of less than 5 minutes, they've been turned down. Email forwarding's on, out of office replies are on, e-discovery might be on if you need it. Those types of things become when IT and when security have to do the redundant and the tedious stuff. That's when that fatigue really sets in. That's when the burnout sets in. You're not getting those little wins in terms of, or big wins in terms of, stopping an attacker or something like that. And that's been seeing my team be able to focus on the stuff that is that reward for them, that feels better to get done and feels like they're having an impact, has been, honestly, the best part of getting some of these tools, this tool in particular, enabled.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, I want to make sure we have time for questions at the end here. So we've talked a lot about the benefits you and the team are seeing from adopting and leveraging AI, but I'm certain there are still folks listening that are, hesitant to make that leap. What advice would you give to other security teams or other IT teams who are considering implementing Workbench or other AI tools, but are hesitant about either the learning curve, the integration process, or just in general about like using AI?
I think I think number one hits it right. Just doing it and just getting kind of over that hesitancy is part of it. You're going to kind of have to deal with some heartburn. That's okay. It's part of the job. I think we all have to accept risks we were not prepared to accept at the beginning of the day, but at the end of the day, the industry, the nature of business today is going to change either around you and something's going to happen to you, or you can kind of leverage that change for the benefit of your teams, your organization. Primarily, I used the analogy earlier, and I do use it all the time, of this flaming tire is heading down the hill already. You're not going to be able to get in front of it, but you should be able to put some sort of guardrail, or you got to kind of figure out what you're going to do about the tire at some point. And it will, change will either happen to you or for you.
I'm not sure if we're trying to convince people this is the right call to say, "Hey, it's a flaming tire coming down at you. Get out of the way." But I definitely hear you. The analogy that I've heard recently is that like using AI in your job is, it's going to be the new typing. That like, whenever 20 years ago it was totally acceptable to do single finger typing. It's now not, and it's pretty soon it's going to be as frowned upon, I suppose, to not use AI in your environment, because you need to be able to move fast. And if you're not, everybody else who's around you is just going to be moving faster.
Absolutely. And I think that you're also going to see, as I mentioned earlier, we're being asked to do more with less. And unfortunately, that trend's really not changing
Yeah.
for the near or far term, I don't think. I mean, bold prediction that security teams are going to be lean and that they're going to have to make do with kind of what they have. So making the right decision when it comes to, if you're not getting any heads in 2025, 2026, start to look at how you can optimize your process, start to look at what tools are available. Do the diligence around it, of course, do as much as you can to make yourself feel comfortable. And once you kind of take that digital Pepsid or whatever it is to get that heartburn down a bit, jump in with both feet, because it definitely will start to kind of light bulbs will start going off in your head, either as the stakeholder yourself or as the engineer that may want to pitch for this, or if you just want to see the demo. I think you'll start to kind of get an idea.
I love it. Okay, I think that's all we're going to have time for, Joe. I have really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you for sharing everything, and thank you to the audience for listening in. We would love to open the floor to any questions you have. So please, if you have any, go ahead and go ahead and ask in the chat. Just type in the Q&A box in the top right, and we'll answer answer the questions, or we'll do our best to answer the questions. I can't promise we'll be able to answer absolutely everything. There's one question here for you. Have you noticed any differences in how junior versus senior members adapt to utilizing Workbench or AI in their daily workflows?
Yeah, I think it depends on responsibility, right? As a senior member, a lot of times you may have reports, you may have more people coming to you in the organization with questions, or any sort of like information gathering. You might also be getting, the stakeholders that can't get a hold of your manager coming to you. And so what it may help with is that kind of, sometimes we forget that it's also a great AI tool. It's not just for running workflows and running and hitting other endpoints, but we can say things like, okay, I've got this incident, or can you go grab this incident out of Jira? Give me a quick incident summary that's two phrases or two sentences, direct and to the point, executive communication style. And it does a great job of just saying, this is what happened, this is who was affected, here's some bullet points. And we've gotten great responses actually from that kind of very direct feedback. Whereas I think sometimes when we're especially subject matter experts, we like to be verbose and kind of flex that muscle of, here's the indicators of compromise, and here are the TTPs they use. And for junior members, I think it's a great, again, I love the idea of using it as your digital mentor, your kind of copilot along an investigation, or asking it. You can even ask along the way of an investigation, what does NIST say I should do next? Or what would you do? Or what would any incidents that may have hit the news that use this tactic in the past? There's some really interesting kind of prompts you can jump off into. You can always rabbit hole, but that I definitely see the seniors using it for a little bit more of the internal, like the reporting and the kind of all up summaries, whereas the analysts, the junior folks, are using it a little bit more of like an in the moment, but also a good learning partner to summarize stuff that they're seeing.
Yeah, completely. I like that. Like I obviously showcase using tools and like calling out, but honestly, like that implicit knowledge of, NIST, or like even just general, like, hey, these TTPs are associated with this particular like type of attack. Maybe you should consider investigating this. Is super, super useful. There's another question here. As AI becomes more embedded in security operations and your team, what metrics or signals should teams look at to ensure it's driving impact? That's a tough one.
That is a tough one, and it's a great question that I think like traditional metrics, your all your MTTs and stuff, may or may not really reflect over time. If you're not gathering them today, then you might not be able to kind of get that point where looking forward you start to see either a continue. You want to see that down to the right, hopefully, but I think it would be a potentially interesting metric to look at, kind of if you can measure when you're not able to use or when you are not using, even if you do some A/B testing between kind of the AI tool and not. But it's, driving meaningful impact, man, that is a great question that I haven't really, besides the traditional KPIs that we use, like mean time to respond. Excuse me. Interestingly enough, like our mean time to our alert acknowledgement is super fast in one system because we're using automations to kind of look at what signals are coming in. And so it's not a reliable metric anymore. So then we just kind of pivoted over to, more of our incident kind of phases, your containment, your confidence and things like that to drive what our metrics are going up to the execs.
I guess like for Workbench in particular, like if it's hands-on keyboards, like the mean time to acknowledge or mean time to respond won't change, but mean time to remediate should. At least I'd hope that if you're able to investigate something and pivot across 10 different sources really quickly, it should help. But for things like your third-party risk or something like that, I think you'd have to, it's really hard to have generic metrics in security, and that the instant you start measuring something, the instant it becomes gameable. But saying, hey, here's you kind of mentioned one pretty early on, which is it's now taking us 2 weeks to go through an actual vendor risk review versus 4 weeks. That's a pretty phenomenal reduction. And if you're able to say, hey, with the same headcount, we reviewed 20 vendors or 30 vendors as opposed to 10 or 15 last year, that's a pretty significant increase. But I think I'd probably have to think about it a little bit as well, but think about the actual processes themselves and what you're driving towards. So
yeah, I should say that we are measuring estimated time worked on some of those. So when you see things like 10 hours per vendor security review, and then we're able to shave that down to 2 in some, that's direct hands-on, focus only on that vendor security review, and then get that number. That's very easy to say. This is directly attributed to this tool.
Fab. Okay, I think that's now definitely all we're going to have time for. But Joe, thank you so much for joining, and to everybody who's stuck around and listening, thank you so much for coming along. We really appreciate it. If you want to try out Workbench, go ahead, Tines.com. You can sign up for a free. You sign up for a free tenant, and you can sign up for a free trial of Workbench. If you want, you can also try out our bootcamp. So that's tines.com/bootcamp/workbench. There you'll get the wonderful Colleen, who will showcase and bring you through setting up Workbench for the first couple of your first couple of tools and stories, which is really cool. That's like a hands-on training. But yeah, we'd love you to reach out, say hi in the community Slack, say hi to our support team, and even if you want to chat to us, we're more than happy to chat. But yeah, we've really appreciated you joining. Joe, thank you so much again. It was fun having you on.
Yeah, had a great time. Thank you so much.
Great. Okay. Thanks very much, folks. Catch you soon.